Welcome back. We appreciate you spending some time with us today here on the Roundtable program on this Sunday. Hard to believe August is already almost in the books for this year. But we're talking a little bit of an agricultural conversation today, but it trickles down to affect so much more in our world. Tad Nicholson from the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association, also Paul Herring-Shaw. He is a farmer in the local area down in Bowling Green. We appreciate you guys spending some time with us today. We're talking about corn and as it relates, corn and wheat and grain, and as it relates to everything right now. And I guess, Tad, put a finger on the pulse of this drought. We keep going back to 1988 in conversation. I lived here. I know what it was like. But in today's world, and as, I guess, agricultural production has really amped up, if you will, around Northwest Ohio, especially with the dawn of the importance of ethanol, how do you, I guess, what do you give the grade? What do you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst?
Well, you know, it's a $1 billion question this year, and I've been asked it 1,000 times this summer, and to really
1,001.
1,001 times now. You know, we're going to know the results in October when we get the crop off and put it in the bins. But there's a few things that go in our advantage compared to 1988. We have better varieties of corn today. We use biotechnology that allows plants to be more hardy in stress situations like a drought. And so, you know, a bigger root mass, there's stronger stalks today than we have in the past, and we're able to hang on a little bit. It's not to say that we're not going to have a lower yield this year. I mean, we are. I don't know anybody that thinks that we're going to have normal yields. It's going to be difficult. But if we had been using the same varieties in today as we did in 1988, we'd be talking about serious disasters. And we're just not there at this point. We're just talking about a drought. And so putting it on a scale of 1 to 10 is a difficult thing to do, but I would say we've been through droughts before. We've lived through them. They hurt for a year, and then we move on. We put a new crop in the ground the next year.
88 was not as bad of a recession year as what we have seen. So everything's relative,
right.
But as you kind of categorize it and add the recession to the mix, and I mean, how hard does that add to it?
Well, you know, I think our biggest concern is that we overreact to a one-year situation. You know, we're talking about a waiver to the renewable fuel standard, thinking, well, that would reduce the amount of ethanol that you know would take up corn. You know, our livestock customers are talking about reducing the herd that we have in the country. These have long-term implications. Not we're dealing with short-term. It's gonna be difficult. But if we really start to change national energy policy because of a one-year situation, that's bad for America. That's really bad for our future. It's a much bigger conversation than we can really deal with a one-year drought. Likewise, if we start overcorrecting and selling off too much of our cow herd or sow herd with pork production, that's a long-term rebuild when the market does change. And so we'll have ample corn again, and I just hope we don't get into a situation of overcorrection.
And the final question on a weather-related topic, you go back to March when we had farmers were itching to get in the ground early. Did that happen? Did that stuff sustain? I mean, even Paul, you could get in on this as well. But I mean, did that add to any of the problems that we're seeing here in August?
No, I don't think so. I think it was a function of heat and dry weather, and that was really happening during pollination. So I think farmers capitalized on an opportunity to plant a little bit earlier than normal, but I don't believe that has anything to do with the situation that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
I was going to say that finish up what Tad was talking about. Yes, we got in early, and actually a lot of people thought, okay, we've got in early. This usually correlates into a big crop.
Sure.
And so everything was there to have a very good crop, in fact, record production, as Tad said earlier. Mother Nature didn't cooperate. And the heat probably bothered more than the dry weather did. The dry weather hurt, but the heat on top of it, especially during the pollination period, that's where most of the production issues are coming from.
Go ahead.
Jeff, you were talking about planting season, and so I want to take you back to about March, before any farmer put any crop in the ground, and show you the scenario that was happening there. We knew there were intentions. USDA does the surveys, the farmers say what they plan on putting in the ground, and we knew there was going to be a large acreage put in the ground this year, larger than previous years. And that happened. And so we had a great planting season. And in that scenario back in March, you could have said, well, if we have ample rain and a good growing season, and let's say we had a bumper crop this year, we were looking at scenarios of oversupply to take the price of corn down to about $4 or so. This was a very real economic scenario, and the opposite happened. The only thing that changed was instead of the rains bringing a bumper crop, the rain stopped and we had a drought crop, and the result was a swing from what could have been $4 all the way up to now where we're in the $8 range. So it could have really went either way.
Let's teach our viewers for a moment as far as the corn crop as it is. And Paul, you were saying in one of our breaks, our first break, you were telling me, you said a majority of this crop is going to go to livestock. But how much of a percentage are we talking here in Northwest Ohio goes to ethanol production?
That's a difficult question to answer because you got to remember, when you take a bushel of corn and you produce ethanol out of it, you'll get about 2.83 gallons to a bushel of ethanol. But then you get a co-product, and it's a high protein feed supplement that goes back to livestock, and that's about 16 pounds, I believe it is, of a high protein feed supplement. So the ethanol industry in Northwest Ohio is actually pretty large, partially because we have two plants, pellet plants. One is in Leipzig, and the other one's in Fostoria, and we have another plant just across the border up into Michigan and Adrian. So a good chunk of our corn probably goes into the ethanol, but there's also a large part of it that is shipped out by rail and goes out to the East Coast and to the Southeast and to the livestock industry.
Well, go ahead.
An important thing to remember on this, though, is before we had ethanol plants, around the country and especially in Northwest Ohio, we had a certain amount of corn that the market would bear, and so you would produce, and that's what it was. When a new customer and ethanol came along, the farmers grew more corn. I mean, that was the result of that. So it's not saying, let's take the same pile of corn.
And is that why there was a goal this year to get more in the ground? Strictly because of ethanol, or was it just?
No, it's because the price of corn. So all corn customers, we were exporting more to our foreign customers. Livestock was consuming a relatively the same amount, and ethanol had ramped up over the past several years to really kind of level out the market of where we need to be. So the market was saying we need to have some more corn on the market, and so that's what triggered the farmers to plant additional acres.
Why? You said we're exporting so much, especially these countries where they need the U.S. to step in and help them with food. Why do you have the UN urging this? This is according to a CNN report. Why do you have the UN coming in and saying the U.S. needs to ease its ethanol mandate? Why is the UN stepping in?
I've tried to figure the UN out on this in the past, and it's a difficult thing. The fact is, we've always shipped. The United States has always been an exporter of grain, all ag commodities. In fact, I mean, that's what has really helped our trade imbalance is agriculture, and so there are a lot of countries that count on us. But whether it's $2 corn or $8 corn, it's still the percentage of our corn hasn't really changed going to some of these other countries. China could be a game changer, though. But when you're talking about, the UN may be talking about, third world type countries, and the fact is there are a lot more problems in getting food to some third world countries besides the price of a commodity, mostly politics.
And I was going to say, the other thing to add on to that is that when you look at ethanol, again, those co-products, there's a lot of countries, particularly Japan and China, they use these co-products, these dried distillers grains, which are a high protein feed supplement. That is a major part of their animal livestock nutrition program. So it is being used by everybody, and actually it's a cheap source of protein for even some of the poorer countries.
We talk again and again when the gas prices go up. We talk to the oil and gas industry, but I mean, are you fielding questions because of ethanol's importance in I guess gassing our cars? Are you fielding questions on why are these gas prices so high?
Well, I'll tell you.
I mean, if ethanol is so cheap, and ethanol, what did you say? There was one stat you guys put out. It dropped the price of gas over $1 in 2011.
Yeah. So what kind of shape would we be in without ethanol in the mix? I mean, that's the question to consumers. You'd be paying $1.09 more.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a pretty bad scenario. So I think it's been a very responsible energy policy to build in slowly ethanol into that market. So it's not a huge disruption, and it's just a simple economics. Ethanol is cheaper than gasoline.
If I go out right now today and if I fill up my car at 5 different stations, am I getting ethanol in my gas at every single one of those stations?
Every single one. I'll go on a limb and say that it's in about 90% of Ohio's gasoline, and it's blended at 10%. And that's the allowable level in the.
And usually there's a sticker on those pumps telling you so, right?
Sometimes it is, sometimes not. But I mean, it is. It's in a vast majority of ours. So chances are probably so. It's probably in your car right now.
So it is not a fallacy, because I know we have kind of been like, what? When the stories have come out, the drought has affected gas prices, and everybody's like, what? But if you consider, I guess we're proving it true today here, saying, as far as ethanol is concerned, those prices are going up. Am I understanding this correct? Those prices are going up because of corn. Am I there? No. Set it straight.
It would go up because of the price of oil. So ethanol follows. It's a fuel additive. So the ethanol price is going to move with the price of oil.
Okay.
But it's lagging behind,
so
and it is cheaper. So it's that lower cost additive that adds octane. So that's how we get the higher octane gasolines at the pump.
Well, I guess, where do we start seeing, I guess you don't want government to come in and tell you X, Y, and Z, but where do we start seeing the ethanol production, the farmers really having a hand in amping up? We tried to get a huge crop in this year. It hasn't worked out, but can the crop get even bigger for 2013?
Certainly. I think there's a huge expectation.
It's not it's not a landlocked situation.
No. And it's not because of a need to supply for any one given market. It's all markets combined have put the price at $8 or so. That tells a farmer, plant more corn.
Mm-hmm. And it's simple supply and demand.
Yeah, very simple supply and demand. And I would say this, that if with this $8 corn, it is going to ramp up production, and it's going to ramp up production in overseas and in South America, so that we will actually probably see competition coming in, especially for our export markets, from these other countries, because they'll have a chance to make a profit. And what you're going to see here in the United States, particularly in the fringe areas of, maybe cotton prices aren't doing so well, so a farmer will decide to plant a little more corn and a little less cotton. Or it could be another type of crop. It could be wheat here in Ohio. It could be soft red winter wheat is maybe not as profitable, so we will plant a little less of that and plant a little more corn. So the farmers will respond to the market.
This is a world market as well, and that's what maybe the UN maybe ought to focus on, is really helping other countries develop agriculture. At $2 corn, many parts of the world couldn't afford to. They didn't have the soils, the water that we have in the United States. But at $8, maybe they can. That's a world price. It's not just the United States. It's a worldwide commodity.
How much of the crop right now that's starting to come out, how much of the crop was hurt? Are we putting any totals on that at this point? I just know when we've been over to Williams, they're declaring disaster declarations, obviously, because of the drought, and the heat, as you said, was the mitigating factor. But when you look at how much is sustainable and how much good crop is coming out, how many more times out of the ground do we have yet this year?
Well, you have one crop, and I think what you've got to keep in mind, location. Mm-hmm. You get just south of Toledo, and you get over towards east of Perrysburg, maybe a little way. They're a little bit more of a garden spot. Where I'm at, just south of Bowling Green, we've not been terrible. We haven't been great. We're going to take a hit, absolutely. And then you get over towards Van Wert County and Paulding County. Yes, definitely. And I was just reading this morning that there are garden spots throughout the United States. There's areas in Illinois, and they just had a report that one of the crop tours, they had a pleasant surprise in Iowa, that one portion of Iowa is having a better crop. So
you're using garden spot to describe an area that's done well.
Done well. Yeah, it's done a little better than the rest of the people. So, the entire crop is going to be, when you look at the total production, it's all going to be affected. We're probably going to take 20%, 25% yield reduction this year compared to what we had expected. But it's until we really harvest it, which is another month or two away, we really won't know completely what the total impact will be.
Tad, if this waiver were to go through as far as ethanol production is concerned, and what the government wants to, or what some in Congress want to see happen, what does that mean essentially if somebody's in the ethanol industry here locally? What's going to happen?
Well, it's difficult to say because if ethanol is cheaper than gasoline, and if you're a fuel marketer and you're used to doing that,
does it,
whether it's mandated or not, you may say, look, it just makes good business sense for me to have ethanol in the fuel mix here.
What I was going to ask is, does it make good economic sense when you've got something like this to put, I guess, kind of a handcuff on it a little bit?
It doesn't make. You mean the waiver?
The waiver,
or the,
correct. I
yeah.
mean, for the government to step in and say, this came in, this was back in 2007 when ethanol production was growing and growing, and it was not nearly what it's come to be in the 5 years since. But when these standards were put out there to continue to increase the production, and then all of a sudden you put the brakes on that, I guess my point is, it seems like it would, in the long run, hurt a lot more than just corn producers.
Yeah, it definitely would. First, I think it's important to understand why we have to have a mandate in the first place. Because if ethanol is cheaper, it's better for the environment. It burns cleaner. It's American-made. We've created lots of American jobs that can't be outsourced to any other country, and it helps us produce a livestock feed. Why would anybody say, well, I don't want to have that in the fuel mix? And the reason was it couldn't break in. We have a very well-established fuel market, and it's petroleum-based. And so all the vehicles that we have in the United States that run on petroleum, all the pumps that dispense petroleum, that's been the mainstay. And for any other fuel, whether it's corn ethanol or any advanced biofuel, to enter into that market, it's not an easy nut to crack. And it took a requirement by the Congress to say we can do this. America can make this commitment. So we're gonna commit to it, and we have a mandate because of it. So anybody that would go in now and say let's do a waiver would have certain goals in mind, and I think many of them have cheap corn in mind, and it just isn't going to happen that way. It's too established at this point.
Does your association have lobbyists in Washington trying to keep this from happening?
First of all, we have we do, and we're extremely committed to the renewable fuel standard. We've worked a lot of years to establish that. We do, however, understand there is a waiver process that's built within the renewable fuel standard, and that is allowable, and we support the fact that there is that flexibility. So the fact that people are requesting a waiver today is not something that we've been jumping up and down about opposing, but we definitely don't think that now's the right time or that it will be they will get the waiver.
I'm going to have to let that be the last word. Gentlemen, we appreciate it so much taking the time to discuss this issue here on the Roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay right there. We'll wrap things up for this Sunday right after this.